We don't have any more such funny stories to tell, so we go to something more serious now. And I'll talk a little bit about SK Services carbon footprint. And as you remember from the last year, those who were here last year, and thank you all for coming back, and all the newbies as well, so who haven't been here before. Last year we spoke that like we were kind of grown-ups, we had 20 years of history already, and then we said that we are going to academy, and we went to the academy, which was called, and still is called, Green Tiger Academy. In that journey we redefined how do we look ourselves as part of some kind of a green journey. We had very little done by that time when we were here, and we said that we had redefined the mission that we had. If we previously said that we enable your businesses and the customers to enjoy their digital era effortlessly, and we now allow them to enjoy the digital era with the smaller ecological footprint, without defining too much about that. The backstory of that, of course, is that when we look at SK, we are creating services that in the real world don't exist. We can think about that, well, maybe the signing in a physical world is somewhat similar to the electronic signing, maybe. But how do you define the authentication? And what is it in the real life? Where does it happen? How many of those are there? How do we measure the footprint of those activities? Almost impossible. So we create some kind of new services, and we definitely, even if they do exist, we increase the need for them. The other thing about the business is that the business is built to be growing. So we are growing all the time, therefore our footprint is growing. So is it all justifiable? So should we exist? Should we have the conference? Should we have the business? Should we be here? Kind of a mystery there. And when we started to think about that, then we came to the conclusion that, it's very hard to really measure us against anything that happens in the real world, but we have an excellent way of looking how are we doing if we just compare our own services to each other and a little bit think about what we find there. So we can measure actually ID card against mobile ID against smart ID. They kind of do the same thing. So we can ask that, okay, how do they measure up to each other? And then we can go and find out maybe how do we measure up against something that is our competitor. Maybe then we can find out something on the real world, how do we measure up against that? But initially, let's just try to measure our own services. And the other thing about this growing footprint was that we have to actually define that we are in our core positive to the ecology somehow. So that should be kind of the core function that we have. So we should have the smaller footprint in mind, as we said. And then we did a study. Right? We have spent months and months on that. And kind of the very blunt statement would be like absolutely non-scientific, and that's what you see everywhere. So you have a measurement against something. It's really, really kind of, okay, I will go through it. This is a cup of latte. For the cup of latte, you can do 13 ID card transactions. Authentications or signatures doesn't matter. You can do 52 mobile ID transactions. Authentication signatures doesn't matter. You can do 85 smart ID transactions. Again, what the kind of transaction actually is doesn't matter. And this is so wrong. The whole screen is so wrong. But that's how we can quickly measure up it, because it doesn't tell any story about our service. It's very hard to actually understand what it means. But that's how this ecological footprint quite often is visualized, and we do it as well. So we have some kind of this kind of data that can measure up against something. But in real life, of course, we have a lot of assumptions. And all of those assumptions mean that we leave something out. We have a lot of limitations. We also leave a lot of things out when we do some measurements. The only thing we can really reliably say, coming back to this previous slides, is that there's 13 against 52 against 85 percentage-wise of how do they interact with each other is a real ratio. So that's what we can tell about those assumptions limitations. Quickly going deeper, what actually did we find out then? We did find out that footprint from our services directly, all in 2021, was a bit same for the ID card and Smart ID, and for the mobile ID, a bit lower. But again, we have to understand that there is a huge difference in the number of users and transactions for those services. On the top of those columns, you see some colors, and down there you see that that's transactions. And if we look into those colorful transactions, then you see something like that, which isn't visible there, because the other thing is tons of CO2, 2,000 of them, tons of CO2. Here you have 1.3, 3.1, and 4.1. So clearly not on the same scale even are the transactions. Some random results more from the study. We have like huge amount of graphs, data taken, and thank everybody who has contributed from our partners there. So what did we find out? We found out that the ID card really is quite CO2 intensive on the footprint side. So most of that, as you see from the listing on the left to my left from my side, at least on right on your side, that most of that goes into application and issuance part, and then production of the card itself. So there's a huge amount of plastic involved. Some other thing that we kind of try to understand where that, if we are looking then into this birthday service, 5 year of Smart ID, then we look into Smart ID and we see that the issuance is with a different footprint in different countries. And again, we have to think why it is. And there, I would like to point out that the ID card helps a lot. If you look at the graph itself, then you understand that Estonian ID card is used in the Smart ID Estonian issuance and isn't used at all in the Smart ID and Latvia and Lithuania. We don't know what was the footprint of those things that we use there. It isn't visible. And then going with the Smart ID further, we can say that the office issuance is like, it's totally in a different world compared to the internet issuance, which is then based on the ID card, or the biometric issuance, which is based on the passport or the ID card, and then the ID card of not Estonian origin. So somewhat different takeaways from our footprint, and to give you some thought for questions and discussions later on, and for Koda and Mairit to actually beat me about, are that comparison between those different EIDs to not actually come up if we look at this kind of a blunt number of how many coffees can you take for one transaction, and it really doesn't tell anything about our services. And always the first electronic identity or core identity takes the whole burden of issuing something that is valid for the longer period, and others ride on that token that was issued. The others will take the advantage of this one token that was already issued. If you have an ID tool, then please use it. So the usage is actually the part where the value is created. If you just have it, it doesn't matter. It doesn't do anything good. But the ID card was with the biggest footprint of those tokens to be issued. Even with the ID card, if you would onboard yourself from home with the ID card 2 times in the life cycle of that ID card to Smart ID, instead of going to the bank office, the ID card, in essence, already is an ecological solution for the problem of onboarding to the Smart ID. This issue of going to any office that we used to have, and we still somewhere have, is such that one visit to the office equals to thousands of transactions in the electronic world. So the same assurance level of somebody being somewhere is guaranteed thousands times with the electronic solutions instead of offline physical meetings. So we have like a huge impact to the society, we hope, although it's very hard to really pinpoint that down to the exact numbers. So if you have an electronic identity in the society versus not having one, we are very sure the only thing we can actually deduct. We are very sure that we are having a good impact on the society wherever this electronic identity exists. So that's why we think that we do have reason for being here, hosting you hopefully for many, many years. And that's about it for my introduction to the panel. So that's about this kind of a sustainability and ecological footprint point of view on SK services before I release others to talk about how we did that wrong and we can do everything else wrong. And we have absolutely excellent guest here from Lithuania, Goda Raibite, who is going to tell how to do stuff better than we did and how to read those coffee machines better than maybe we did so far. So Goda, welcome.